No. My video. No.
Okay. Okay, everybody. Good evening. My name is Tom Drew, and I'm the co-chair of the Trustee Development Committee. And I'm welcome you to our program, The Value of Buckles, the essential information every trustee should know. We're very fortunate tonight to have two speakers with us who are in the Buckles office. We have our executive director, Dave Hanson, and the manager of information technology, Joe Guida. We have quite a number of people here so far. We're up to 77 people who've joined, and that's terrific. We have over 32 libraries represented here tonight. And thank you very much for coming. The only thing I would want, we'll have muted your microphones. Yeah, we have questions and answers, which will be done at the end of the program. However, if a question comes along within the program that you wish to share, you can just go to the chat box and put your question in the chat box, and we'll be monitoring that, and we'll make sure that they get answered, if not right at the end of the program, if they're not answered throughout the program itself. So that's pretty much all I have to say. I would like to start off, though, however, with asking our newly minted president of Buckles, the young lady who's the head of the director at Hasbrook Heights. She's been a great member of the Trustee Development Committee, and she's also been a great leader of the Friends Committee. So with no further ado, if I may, I would like to introduce Mimi Hoy, who has a few welcoming words.
Thank you so much, Tom. It is such a pleasure. Warmest welcome, everyone. I want to thank all of you, trustees and colleagues, for spending the time with us this evening to take the time to learn all there is about Buckles. You're in for a treat. We're here to help you be as successful that you can be in your role as a trustee. You play such a vital role in each of our communities and libraries that the impact that you make speaks volumes. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the team from the Buckles office and our colleagues in the field for investing what you do best, the love of libraries and literacy, and promoting it from where you are. So enjoy tonight. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out, speak to your directors. Also, you're more than welcome to contact the Buckles office and myself. We're here to help you and feel empowered that you have the right tools to lead from where you are. So thank you. Enjoy the night.
Thank you, Mimi. Now, without any further ado, I would like to present the Executive Director of Buckles, Mr. Dave Hanson.
Folks, it's great to be here with you. I hope everybody can see the screen, right? When I do this on Zoom, sometimes we'll figure it out. All right. So stoked to be with my trustees tonight. I always like to say thank you because whether or not, I hope everybody understands that literally we cannot do library without you. You are the reason that we get to do library because we need a library board to do library, and that's what you guys do, and we so thank you for taking the time to do it. Tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time really talking about what we call the value of Buckles. Now, you got to report the Buckles Consortium Value Report of 2024. We do it every year. You can see a big breakdown of it. You've got some things. You've got what we call the wheel, which is an understanding of our core services, and it gives you some counting numbers to think about. You got some things to do this. We're going to run through a quick presentation that hopefully encapsulates this for you and gives you a better understanding about what Buckles is and what your membership is all about. So we're going to start with saying Buckles is one consortium, but 78 individuals. And we see this in our mission statement, and we're very always thinking about our mission statement. Buckles empowers our member libraries by providing a collaborative framework made stronger by the uniqueness of its members. Now, this is the big part we're going to talk about tonight. We demonstrate our commitment to collaboration through cost-effective resource sharing, shared professional development, and the fostering of initiatives to facilitate a forward-thinking public library system. And I think the best organizations really do focus on their mission and really spend time putting that into what they're going to do every single day. And this is what we hope you see with Buckles. And we're going to start by talking about cost-effective resource sharing. You have access, because you're part of a family of 78, to a lot of items, millions, right? And you have an average borrowing value of about 100,000. That means that, you know, this is the extra money that you get from having access to these other collections. You have access to an amazing shared e-collection. Shared e-collection is something that continues to grow. To give you a sense of it, when we look at all of the shared circulation we do this year, which is our standard, which is the stuff that's on the shelves at your library, and when we look at the stuff that we're sharing through this e-collection, e-content now makes up 19 to 20% of what we do. So 1 out of every 5 items is part of that e-content. You're in one of the most robust sharing e-content collections there is. We have the shared integrated library system. Some of you may know it as Polaris. Some of you may know it as the thing that has the ability for you to check stuff in, check stuff out. It's how you place holds. It's how material moves across everything. And this includes for you 2 system admins, right? This is an average savings. Now, for some people who are smaller, you'd actually save a lot more. For some people who are bigger, you may save a little less, but it's like about $50,000 a year is what you're saving. And you also get access to what we consider the best in state delivery service, meaning that we have Amazon level. We're going to bring books, if it's available, on a shelf within our consortium. Your patron's going to have it available in your library, usually by about 48 hours when we're doing between members. That's if it's available, right? So those are all really big things we do, and we do them in a way that I think is very cost effective. It's going to ultimately save you money. Let's talk a little bit about shared professional development. You know, when we survey the trustees, this is one of the top 3 things they talk about. This access that your staff has to professional development opportunities. So it doesn't matter how small you have. We have libraries that are serving less than 4,000 people, right? If you think about how you're going to run some kind of shared professional program for that person, it gets hard fast. So let's talk about some of the ways that we're out there helping your staff get better, right? First and foremost, directors can actually serve on the executive board, and every single one of our directors has a vote at our system council where we make all our big decisions. This is amazing a bit of thing for you to grow as a professional. If you want to be on that executive board, you can have that experience. But no matter what you do, you're going to be part of that system council, and you're going to be looking at big decisions, and it just helps you grow as an individual professional. But besides that, we have several committees for directors, for staff. We have committees for circulation staff. We have committees for youth services staff. We have adult services staff. If you want to grow as a library worker, we have an option for you, and there's tremendous value. We also provide regular training on all our mandatory services. Mandatory services are stuff everybody is required to pay for, and the office provides training for any of the staff on this. And it's something that we started about 2 years ago out of a strategic plan, and we think it's a really great asset that you have the ability to send people to learn more about our ILS, to learn more about cataloging, those kinds of things. We actually do something that's really fun. I look forward to it every year. We do an annual cohort of leadership training where anybody from around our consortium can nominate somebody to send through leadership training. And usually we're identifying folks who your local library thinks might be a leader someday. And we send them for a program that we do with Bergen County Community College. And they come together for a period of time, and we burnish their leadership skills. And I can't tell you how many people who go through that program ultimately become directors in our system or leaders within our system. We're so excited that we've been able to do that. We've been able to do that, I think we're going on 6-7 years now. It's an amazing thing that everybody gets access to. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is something we do, and something that trustees are really a part of. We do the Friends Brunch every year, but that's just part of an overall strategy where we provide scholarships to our library staff to help them go get that MLS, again, to create leaders for the next. But it's so we're making an investment. We don't just have programs, we don't just have training. We as a consortium have come together and decided to make an investment in your people and ours. Forward thinking library system. Now you're going to hear a lot more about this later from Joe. He's also a better cook than I. So if you have any cooking questions, I would ask Joe. I'm a terrible cook, so it would be microwave for me alone. But things you ought to know. Your IT resources that are available to you, some of the things that Joe's going to talk about. What I want you to remember is every member library, all 78, have the ability to outsource a little, some, or almost everything you want to do for your computers in your building. We do it a very cost-effective way. We participate in group purchases, things that you might want to use if you're a library. So if your library uses MeScan or Envisionware, these are products that we negotiate and you get a big discount for buying it through a consortium, right? It's part of why you're in Buckles. We have support for some other hardware pieces. Right now, we support iPads. A lot of people use iPads for MeScan. You know what? You can use them for other things, but if you get them through us, we'll support them. We're there for you. We offer a managed Wi-Fi service. We have, I want to say, somewhere between 35 to 40% of our members now have managed Wi-Fi through us. It's really, really cool. We enjoy it a lot. And I think our members enjoy it because usually the other option, there was a low-cost option through the state, but in order to get service, they were coming from the middle of the state and they wouldn't always come on time. The other thing I want you trustees to understand is something we talk a lot about. There is cyber insurance across all Buckles projects. And what that means, we don't really face a lot of outside threats, but should something happen, and just so you know, it happened in Toronto. I think it happened in a different place where a hacker got into an ILS, took it over, and caused havoc. Now, if that should happen, just know you guys are covered. We have a blanket cyber insurance, and this is one of the really great things as a trustee that you should remember about being part of a consortia, right? Part of consortia, this is a really big deal. I do want to just touch on one thing here, because I know sometimes I get asked this question, and whenever we're with trustees, I always like to make a point to sort of run through this real quickly so everybody understands what we are. So let's just take a look at the Buckles organizational structure. I really like for everybody to understand how this all works. So we start with the system council, right? The system council is the big thing. And what you should know about that is there are 78 members. Each library has a separate vote. It's a ratification body, which means any of the things that we do, the programs, the budget we spend, whatever that means, it requires a 2/3 supermajority to pass all those things. So when we come together to do something, we don't come together to do something just as a majority. It has to be a supermajority. Now, I did mention that executive board. That executive board comes out of the system council. So if you're one of those 78 member libraries, these are the directors of the different libraries, you can run for a term on the executive board. Now, we actually have 9 elected members of the board, 2 appointed trustees. So if you're in the room, the way we do trustees, just so you know, is every year we look and see which libraries haven't had a seat on the board for a while, and we pick names at random. And so if you're one of those lucky people and get called, we do say, please, please, please serve. It's a great way of learning more about the institution and a great way of working with the dedicated members who have decided to become part of our elected board. Now, one of the things you should remember is the executive board, they're the ones that hear all the committee reports. So those committees I talk about, they bring stuff to executive board listens, they decide whether or not they think it's a good idea. If they think it's a good idea, on a simple majority basis, they pass it to system council takes it up. It doesn't become official Buckles stuff unless 2/3 do it. Now, at the end, on the other side of here, we have the Buckles administration. So we have approximately 20 FTEs who work for your organization. They work across all sectors. You got catalogers, you got IT staff, you got people who work with the ILS, you have delivery folks, and then you have some administrative people like me. But that's how your organizational structure. And I know we're talking mostly about value, but I always want to make sure particularly if you have anybody new here, that we get an understanding of how the org structure works. Let's look at us by the numbers so that you have a good sense. We have libraries across 4 counties. So if you want to know, we're not just Bergen County. We got Essex, we got Hudson, we got 1 library in Passaic. So we do go across 4 counties. Our largest Buckles library has about 75,000, a little over 75,000 in their service area. And our smallest is just a little over 3, right? By type, we're mostly, in this type of, we are 76 municipals and 2 associations. 76 municipals and 2 associations. So that's kind of who's involved in what we do. This is one thing that I am very proud of. And one of the things that I try very hard to always get people to understand is our fiscal sustainability. Now, this is something in our current plan, our strategic plan, we talked a lot about. One of the big tenets was to be fiscally sustainable for both the institution of Buckles and the member libraries. And if you look at these budgets, 2020, of course, we're sort of in the end of COVID, but you can kind of see what we do. And I put these things forward so you can see the change in the budget every year. And then you can look at what inflation looks like, right? And one of the things that we've been able to do very effectively in working as a group, in doing some of these group purchases and really thinking about how we're doing this, is to beat that inflation number. And you can look at 2022 and we had 8.5% inflation, right? The Buckles budget went up by 4.2%. Now, that's not to say that your individual bill went up by 4.2%. That's our base budget, right? And I tell you that, and you've got all this. I'm not going to spend a ton of time, but I also, again, when I get to talk to trustees, we try to make sure they understand what the buckets are, the buckets of how your bill gets divvied up. And these are all the areas that they have. Certainly, if anybody wants to know a little bit more, but we always try to let you know that these are the different buckets that we have. These are where we assign the numbers that come into your Buckles bill that you get to see once a year and probably not think so nice thoughts about me. Just remember, you get a lot of savings out of that Buckles bill, okay? Again, you need to understand the Buckles bill a little bit. No hesitation. Give me a call. Certainly walk you through. It's a bigger process, but we and as a group have come together to really try to figure out a way to do this in the most equitable possible way. I don't want to take a tremendous amount of time. I know you might have a lot of questions. One of the big things I want to just put on everybody's radar, because this is going to be a big change for us, is we are in the midst of getting ready for a new strategic plan that will start next year. It's a 5-year plan. Currently, where we are in that process is the executive board heard that new strategic plan and accepted it. Now, you might say, well, why aren't we hearing more about it? Well, we have to wait, because remember how we talked about that org structure, right? The system council has the final say, and they have the final say by a 2/3 majority vote. So in March, which is our next system council meeting, they will be considering that new strategic plan, and they will be thinking hard about it. And as they think about it, if they pass it, then we will be getting ready and gearing up for 2026 to go into our next round of strategic planning. This, of course, will impact a little bit about the kind of services and the things that we do. It doesn't really change us at our core. It just really gives us a real good focus on what we think are important. Now, I know the next one says questions. However, I believe what we are going to do now is one of the treats that we're able to do here, folks, and one of the things we always like to have our trustees hear from, is one of the big things in your lives that you may or may not really know a lot about is your IT services. It's one of the things that we talk to members and we talk to trustees, they really, really appreciate Buckles' work in. And we're so very blessed today to have our head of IT, Joe, who's going to walk you through some of the more delineated facts and factoids about what we do. So again, as I mentioned, he's a great cook. So if anybody wants some cooking things as well, I'd wait for the other questions, but then ask him about what his favorite dish is. But I'm going to turn it over now to Joe to talk to you a little bit more specifically about what we do on the IT side.
Thank you, Dave. I did make a rigatoni sausage and broccoli dish the other night that my family yells at me at least if I don't make this twice a month, I don't hear the end of it. I'm going to share my screen here. Everyone should be able to see this, but I also want to mirror a lot of what Dave said in the beginning of his presentation. If it weren't for you, this is impossible. So we thank you greatly for that. So what I want to talk about is some of the IT things that we offer that brings value to the Buckles network. And first, I want to start off with just the PCs that we get. The PCs that we get, I deal with one vendor, okay? And I get asked all the time, why don't you go to other vendors? And the reason being is I've had this long-standing relationship with this one vendor. It's CDWG. And as you can see, they're selling this machine that I'm purchasing for this year's upgrade, which is upwards of 300 computers for $935. But because I have this long-standing relationship with them, and because I buy in bulk, I can get that machine for $775. And we can then sell that to the libraries when they're interested in buying them. And it's what we use for upgrades because of the service contract that they pay, which those machines are replaced every 5 years. So every 5 years, a specific model is replaced within that network, and it's upwards of around 300 computers per year. And as you can see, these are the machines that are in the network. The staff side, 667, on the public side, 680, and we have 72 catalog machines, and those are strictly just catalog. You can only search the catalog with them. We have over 1,400 computers within the Buckles network. So, and not only that, the monitors are not replaced during upgrade time, but when they break, they are replaced. So anytime a monitor breaks in the Buckles network, a ticket is sent in and we replace it. Same thing with keyboards and mice. So it's the service contract for this is so beneficial because we can deliver such a great service of keeping the PCs, high-end PCs, on the lower end, hundreds of dollars less than what you could pay just about anywhere else. You can see HP is actually selling this machine in this price range. Newegg, eBay, and B&H, they're all selling it for more money than I'm getting it for. And it's because I have that one vendor and because I have that long-standing relationship with them. Last year, there was a faux pas in the order, and I could only get 125 of the 300 that I needed. And this vendor went out of their way to get the other 175. And when HP refused to put the extra RAM that I needed in it, this vendor ate the cost because that is the long-standing relationship that I have with them. So that is one of the great values of going through one vendor for that. Now, I have vendors for just about everything. It's like the best Rolodex of IT you can think of. So moving on, we'll go to the iPads. It's the same thing. Apple is my vendor, and I get them through, oddly enough, the Apple store that's at the Paramus Garden State Mall. They deal directly with Apple, and I deal directly with them. And last year, we replaced 82 iPads for less money than what they actually cost. And these were all upgraded for the MeScan systems. And because I was able to get these iPads, this specific one, we didn't have to change the kiosk for the MeScan. We didn't have to change the frame that the iPad goes into. And there's something called a fit kit, which allows the iPad to sit in that frame the right way. If it's bigger, you need a different fit kit. We didn't have to spend 1 cent on any of that because I was able to go directly to the vendor and get the exact iPad I needed for the upgrade so that we didn't have to have any extra costs. And that is also under service contract. And those are replaced every 4 years as well. And as Dave mentioned, you can get iPads for something other than MeScan. You can get them directly through us, and we'll support them too. And Cloud9. So when you go to your library, you have a lot of libraries, I think over half, have Cloud9 in their network where patrons can sit down and they have scheduled time. And this is a new version of PC reservation. It's the upgraded version. It's called Cloud9. It's all in the cloud. No more management consoles where they control a machine. machine is not needed for this anymore. It is all web-based. You can log in through the web and everything. So if a library decides to get Cloud9 on their own, their license, and not through Buckles, they, on average, for a 10 PC network, will pay anywhere from $385 for a 2,500 people in their population to $1,740 for 50,000 people, and that's per year. So if you have 10 computers and you have 50,000 people, you could pay $1,740 per year. The average cost, somewhere in the middle is around $945 per year for a 10 PC network. But when a library does this for their non-Buckles network, they also need to pay Envisionware for the installation. And that ranges $225 an hour. On average, it takes about 5 hours to set it up. They're also spending $1,125 for just a 10 PC setup. But with Buckles, if a library has Buckles computers and they opt to have Buckles computers, they get to take advantage of one license for the entire organization. It's 1.2 million people is in that license, so it covers everyone. And with Buckles, you get installation, you get service, troubleshooting, and tech support. We are one-stop shop. You don't have to call Envisionware. If you have Buckles computers and Cloud9, you call us directly. We handle everything. If you need it installed, we handle it. If you need it uninstalled, we handle it. If you need to add machines, we handle it. But also, we give the libraries their own administrator passwords so they can do this all on their own. A lot of libraries have a lot of tech-savvy staff that like to do this. We give them that ability. And the average cost for a 10 PC library in Buckles on a Buckles network is $250 compared to the other costs that I mentioned earlier. But libraries that have a license for Cloud9, they can have it for their non-Buckles and they'll pay less money. They can do this on their own, and the cost I mentioned earlier is what they'll pay. But if they have a non-Buckles network, you can still get the license from us at a fraction of the cost. The only caveat is the library is responsible for their own support, troubleshooting and installation services and tech support. They would have to do that themselves or contact Envisionware. That's the caveat of having a non-Buckles network, but you can still take advantage of the license. And now we offer Wi-Fi. This is something that we started to do in 2024, and we're up to 34 libraries in the network that has it. And what we're able to achieve with this is a lower cost than your alternative options, a single source of support, us, as mentioned with Cloud9. If you have any issues with your access points or dead zones or just anything in general with the Wi-Fi, you would just contact us directly. We're always monitoring it to make sure that all the access points are up and the signal is right. And, one time we had a library that said, we have a specific dead zone in this one part of the building, but we knew there was an access point there. We adjusted the signal, the dead zone went away. So you get that kind of management with this when you deal with just us. There's planned maintenance and upgrades. And there's the roaming experience for patrons, and not just patrons, staff as well, because there is two networks. There is a staff network and there is a public network. And what that means is whether you hop on the staff network, if you're part of the staff of the library or if you're a patron, when you connect to the Buckles Wi-Fi network and then go to another library that also has Dash Wi-Fi wireless networking, your devices will automatically connect on the fly. So you can go to library A all the way to library B, C, D, and so forth, and it just automatically connects. And this is also a service contract product, and it's replaced every 5 years. And Cisco Umbrella protections, we have Cisco Umbrella, which encompasses the entire network. Along with the cybersecurity that Dave mentioned, we also have something called Cisco Umbrella, which handles malware and viruses and all kinds of nasty stuff that you don't want roaming around on your network. It also extends out to the Wi-Fi network as well, because it is just an extension of the hardwired network. So we get to take a lot of advantage of that as well. So every library has a battery backup. Some libraries only have equipment at their circulation desk. They'll have one of these APC 650s, maybe a 550 if it's an older one. If they have a Buckles LAN cabinet or a stand-up rack, they'll get a 250, 450 or a 750 non-digital system. And the current one that we offer is the APC Smart Digital Battery Backup. These are also covered under service contract. If the unit or the battery inside dies, we replace the unit. We actually had 2 units die earlier in 2024, or in late 24, I should say. And well, we went and replaced the battery, didn't solve the issue. We ended up replacing the whole unit. We actually have another library that's having an issue. They are actually going to get their unit replaced in the next week or so. So every library has one of these. These are also covered. And what these do, obviously, is if you have a power outage, it allows the network to stay up for a few minutes so that if the power comes back, the network never goes down as long as it's within the time frame of it'll allow it to keep it up, which is usually in the 15 to 30-minute range, depending on the load on the battery. Now, in the office, we have a backup solution, which I just had upgraded last year. And it was funded by the Capital Funding Plan. It was installed in the first quarter of 2024, and it's been working phenomenally. It is so much better than what we had, and it was so needed. And I was very happy that we were able to get it because we had almost run out of space, and we were having to clear backups almost daily just to get a new fresh one in case there was an emergency. We have something called a Hyper-V cluster or Hyper-V clusters, and those allow us to control the virtual machines or the VMs that are in the network. When I started at this position, I was told that we probably or might need to replace them. I reevaluated the hardware. They are not end of life. They did not need to be reevaluated. So I was able to just sign a new contract for 3 years for a lot less money than it costs to buy new Hyper-V clusters. So now we can upgrade them next year or the following year, and we don't have to spend that money now. And the goals for the backup system is so that we can have on-prem backups. They'll continue as always. We have every VM has antivirus. We're actually going to be investing in brand new antivirus this year, and it stops crypto viruses and other attacks. Scalability, planning for future data growth. The old system had 8 terabyte of storage. This new unit has 20. And it can go up to 384 terabyte of storage. So we have so much life left in this unit. It makes me, I'm very excited about it, if you can't tell. And the usability on it is fantastic. We have this software called Veeam. It's a gorgeous GUI interface. You can do anything that you want. It just makes life so much easier. And of course, our recovery options are bare metal recovery, which is just a fancy way of saying we have mechanical hard drives and solid state drives in there where you can just grab the data from. VM restoration. So if a VM dies, we can restore it quite easily. And we can reinstall individual files and SQL databases, which are so important for our ILS system. Now, I included this in here because it's amazing how important receipt printers are within our network. They're at every circulation desk and not at every staff machine, but close to. And thermal print heads, they don't use ink, they don't use toner. It's a heat transfer on thermal paper. And those things get extremely hot. So they last a long time, I will say that. But what happens is when they die, a lot of times libraries think they need to buy a new receipt printer, when instead they really only need to spend $50 on a thermal print head, which we sell and install. So whenever we get a ticket about a receipt printer acting funny or printing funny, we always ask, is it printing properly, but you're finding that the printouts are not clear? 99% of the time, that is exactly what's happening, and it's a $50 fix. We can fix these on TM88T3s, 4s, and 5s. The new 6s and 7s that we have, they actually haven't had a bad thermal print head yet, knock on wood. But when that does happen, they're also in the same $50 to $75 range just because they're newer units. And of course, it's an excellent alternative than spending $350 to $400 on a new receipt printer. There's no reason. I'm the worst salesman in the world, if you haven't noticed. I don't want you to spend more money than you have to. $50, it's fixed, and it's as good, if not better, than the first day we installed it. Every library has a Cisco Meraki switch, just like they have a battery backup. And all of the libraries in our network that are within Buckles has one of these switches. An 8-port PoE, 24-port, 24-port PoE, 48-port, and a 48-port PoE. They all have 10-year licenses, which allows us to RMA these units at no extra cost. If a unit dies, I almost always have a spare. I can bring that spare to the library, and then I can replace it, walk away, library's back up and running, RMA this unit, get a new unit back within 48 hours or so. And but I will say this, Meraki has cornered the market, but there's a reason for that. It's because the quality of their equipment is so high that in the time that I've been at Buckles, I think I've RMA'd 3 switches, and I've been at Buckles since 2003. So while I
Hey,
like,
Joe?
yes,
Joe?
yeah.
Tell everybody what RMA is.
Oh, it's return material authorization. It's, if anyone has had anything break on you, 9 out of 10 times, the company is going to contact you and give you what's called an RMA number. You write that on the box, you send it back to whoever's going to ship it out to, and then they send you another one. So that's what RMA is. So everything as far as the Meraki switches is covered, and we just upgraded those last year and the year before. So every library has a new Meraki switch, and we're good for the next upwards of, I think, 7 years or so before we have to think about it again. And I just want to say thank you. And when it's question time, I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Oh,
All right. Tom, it is your traffic cop now.
okay. We've been monitoring the chat box, and at this point there are no questions there, but we do have some questions which came to us when folks registered. We asked if they had any questions they wanted to be sure it got answered. So I will read them, and Dave and Joe can jump in and decide who's going to answer it. There were a couple of questions that we got ahead of time, which were answered during the presentation, so we won't be going through those. But the first question up is, what do you view as the most important issues facing public libraries in 2025, and how can trustees assist with them?
Well, I think clearly that's a Joe question that he really wants to answer. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I could just give a recipe for that one.
You just give a recipe. So we'll take it sort of at two things. I think in the context of what we're talking about here, I think the number one issue that all libraries are facing for their own self is how are they going to protect their HR lines. I think if there's one thing we've overall seen, we all went through a period of rapid inflation. Maybe people missed it, but I think it's kind of hard to miss what has happened in terms of inflation. I know you're trustees, so you see what the health insurance numbers have looked like and all of those typical things. I think, when we think about where we're saving money and why we're saving money and what is really out there for you guys that I hear most about, it's how are we going to keep people in public libraries to serve the public? You can do a whole lot with AI. You can do a whole lot with GUI interfaces. You can do a whole lot of different things. And we certainly are here to provide you with all the technology we can. But I think, just from an empathetic perspective, as we look around and when I talk to directors, when I talk to trustees, and when I talk to state folks, that's a really big piece of the puzzle here, is how we're going to really talk to people about the need for those people to be there. And I think there's never been a more important time, and I'll talk a little bit more theoretically here, as you really think about what you're preparing for and the services that you're providing at your libraries. Some people may think, well, are we talking about book challenge? We talk about this, we talk about that. Here's what I want you to all remember. Time and again, public libraries are about the only thing left in government that people trust. We really are. We're about the only thing that people trust. And it's because since time immemorable, since the beginning of public libraries, you've had sort of really one simple mission, which is to serve everybody, right? And I think one of the things you're going to feel, and one of the things that we're all sort of looking around is, as more and more institutions disappear or decide they're not for everybody, the people in that boat, the people on that lighthouse that are shining the way of hope for everybody, is becoming smaller and smaller. And so I do think, when we think about what the future is of public libraries and what we're planning for, I very much think about, how do we make sure that libraries have the ability to really service their communities? How are we helping them be as cost effective with their dollars so that we can have people there to serve everybody in our communities? And so I know that's kind of a big top line thing. If you want to talk about laws around e-content and all those kinds of things, that can take forever. But I really do think what you're going to see in the coming months and years, at least in the near term, is public libraries having to step into a void where nobody wants to talk about real information. Nobody really wants to talk about the needs of the individual, except for public libraries. And I think that's one of the things that make us really special.
Thank you. Number 2, is there any way we can develop a bookmark with a value statement on it? I must admit, I'm not quite sure what's meant by that, but sounds like something.
Sure. We'll talk a little bit about stuff. As we think about stuff, we talk about printable material and different things. It's certainly possible. The way that we would think about that is we do have a PR committee. We talked about those committees, the way that people can, get forward. If you're interested and you think this is a really good idea, the way that it's most effective to work is to talk to your director and say, hey, director, let's say Caitlin's your director. You say, hey, Caitlin, we'd really like to explore this. And then she's going to bring it to me, or she's going to bring it directly to the PR committee, and they're going to take it up and they're going to think about it. We like to do it through the committee work so that we get multiple viewpoints on it before we get to executive board. So it's not just a bookmark that's going to appeal to one library, it's a bookmark that might appeal to 78. That's the way we normally handle a request like that.
Hey, what type of work does Buckles do to engage in advocacy for public library needs and concerns on behalf of its members?
Sure. So first and foremost, I want to be clear, we don't replace what your local library is doing in terms of calling up your local representative, calling up your state senator, whatever. We don't replace that. We try to really pick and choose what we're going to do in terms of advocating for things that we think are broadly popular within the confines of the consortium. So a couple of things that we've worked on sort of at the Buckles level, if you will. I think the latest and the biggest one was, so you might have heard there was a big capital grant process that happened in which many libraries, not all, certainly in some of our folks did, and some of our folks didn't get some of that capital money from the state to help improve their libraries or to really support building a either a refurbished or a brand new library, right? And that was a really cool thing. Everybody got super excited about it. But we got to thinking about it, and we said, really, we didn't meet the need. We didn't do the job. And so senior members of Buckles, myself included, we really engaged with the New Jersey Library Association around this issue. And this year, for instance, it has become part of our legislative agenda. Now, NJLA actually has lobbyists, and they go to the Hill all the time. And our singular goal there was to create a ongoing permanent construction fund for New Jersey public libraries, because we really do think we didn't meet the whole need, that there's a big need that we get, that we need to do it. Besides that, what you should know is the consortia, through me, we meet quarterly with the state librarian. And we talk about issues in the state, and we have that moment where we have an extra hour and a half where it's just the consortia heads with the state librarian, and we get to talk about the things that are happening, and we get to hear about the things that are happening from the state, and we get to react and sort of talk a little bit about what we think is important, what we think are the things that they should know the consortia are facing, and the things that are at our top of mind. So those are different ways. The other way that we advocate for the consortium, and this is a smaller way, although for many of you it'll be a direct line, is we look for opportunities to create grant funding for the consortia. So a couple of examples. There's a Bergen County grant that comes out annually. And during my time here, we've been able to increase that almost every year. And that gets distributed back to all the Bergen County libraries to assist them with programming. So we advocate to the county to try and do that, do that piece, excuse me. We also try to do and search out for grant funding for things that support us. So just recently, we brought along our first electric delivery vehicle, and that was grant funded through a project through the state library. So you can see that we do some very high level policy. We do some ongoing efforts where we're trying to work with state leaders, and then we're trying to bring home what we can through grant process. And I think those are sort of three very good examples about how your consortium is trying to work on behalf of members to achieve what we think are collective ends.
Thank you. Next, does Buckles have any plans to make use of AI? And if so, what might that look like?
So this is a $64,000 question. I just want to before I say anything, okay, I think it's important to understand what AI can and cannot do in this moment in time, right? We don't have a lot of AI exposure in libraries right now. Now, could that change? Sure. Or is everybody looking on how to use AI in their products? Absolutely. I think everybody is really sort of focused on what it's actually going to provide. And here's where it becomes hard for libraries. So when you see those commercials on TV where a business is like, it's really important for AI to know your data so that you can do things, right? What it's really looking at is historical understanding of what you're doing and making recommendations based historically on what has happened, okay? And I will tell you, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, it could be very useful for doing that kind of analysis, right? It could be useful there. This is where it gets a little bit hard for content people like libraries. So for instance, as I said, it really depends on looking backward to sort of make assumptions. There's a famous thing where, they ask AI to make a rocket ship, right? And when it makes a rocket ship, it looks like a rocket ship. But when you give it to an actual rocket scientist, a rocket engineer, they go through it and they're like, well, it's not going to really work that well because it doesn't really have forward-thinking capacity yet, right? So when we think about the kind of questions that libraries are usually answering, right? We're usually answering something that is going to happen in the future, right? So I want to read a new novel. What should I read? Well, AI had, you won't know much about Onyx Storm until Onyx Storm's been around for a while. For those of you who don't know, Onyx Storm is the new book. It's out. Everybody wants to read it. There's tons of holds. It's just crazy, right? And so it's unclear whether AI is really going to help us in that regard, right? Because it's most of the questions that we're getting, the key components for library work are really future looking about something that hasn't happened yet. And it's unclear whether, what that looks like and how AI is going to be a part of that. So I think the short answer is AI, it's still pretty much out on it. Could AI possibly help with search someday? I think there's a reasonable thing that someday AI might be able to help with search. I think there's a lot of questions that have to be answered for it. I'll give you just another piece of it. Right now, probably the biggest thing that libraries and AI are dealing with is you may have heard that a bunch of people just for, I don't know why, are creating AI content. They'll tell ChatGPT, write a book about making an Italian dinner. And they do it in 30 seconds. They self-publish, put it on Amazon, and if they sell 10 copies, they've made money, right? There's a proliferation. I think that in the near term, if you're really asking what libraries are going to be focused on, I think they're really going to be focused on thinking about how they're dealing with AI-generated content in their collections, because this is new, it's different, it doesn't meet any of your collection criteria, and it's going to be something that we're all going to deal with. But in terms of the impact, I'm a little skeptical. Yes, I'm an older person, so you can call me OK Boomer if you want, but I'm going to just tell you, because of the forward nature of our work, because we're trying to give solutions for stuff that hasn't happened, AI is more limited for us than it is for some other industries.
Thank you. We've got some questions. I've got a few more questions that were ahead of time, but we also have some questions in the chat box. So I'm going to switch over to that for a minute. And Joe, it looks like you're going to be on the dime for all of these.
Okay.
So
Thank God.
First off, what is the cost, if there is any, associated with Dash Wi-Fi?
So I actually did put that originally in my slides, but it was just so much to break down. An example, a 5 access point library would cost you $210 per access point, but what comes with that is the service contract for it for the first 2 years. So you're looking at a little over $1,000 to buy the hardware, but you don't start paying the actual service contract on those access points until year 3. The first 2 years are included. So if you were to buy them today, you wouldn't pay service contract on them until year 3, which would be in 2027, because year 1, 2025 counts as year 1. And it's $75 for the access point service contract. And what that means is in 5 years, we will replace all 5 of those access points automatically. There's no extra cost other than the service contract that you are already paying. There is also a management Wi-Fi fee, and that's per device. That's currently somewhere around $144 per access point. And the more libraries that join, the lower that price gets. When we first started Wi-Fi, it was, I want to say it was $207 a device, but because in the second year we had so many extra libraries join, it dropped it down to 144. So if we were to say get, on average another 10 libraries this year, it might actually drop to below $100 per device. And, if one day we have most of the network, the price of that, we're talking maybe less than $50 a device for the management. And what the management is, it's myself and my 2 technicians monitoring and managing the Wi-Fi network from our end, so that if anything goes wrong, we know about it and we can assess the problem and we can fix it on a quick basis. So those are some of the costs for the Wi-Fi. So after the initial hardware costs, an average 5 access point library at $75 per access point. I mean, you know, maybe I think we're going to say it's like $700 a year, something like that, to have Wi-Fi in your building that's completely covered and replaced every 5 years.
Okay. Another one for you, Joe. How often do you interface with member libraries' IT managers if they have one? And how do you typically communicate information to them?
So there aren't as many IT managers as you would think. What I do deal with a lot are IT or technology librarians that are specifically put in that role. There are a couple of libraries that have IT managers. One that I deal with a lot is at Hoboken. Um, Phil Mendez is their IT manager, and him and I communicate all the time by phone and email. Uh, a lot of times I will get phone calls from a lot of libraries saying, "Hey, I'm getting, you know, such and such," or here's an example. We're getting a new VoIP phone system. Um, what's needed. And that usually starts off with an email, which then goes into a phone call, which then goes into a lot of times um, remote service, where when you get a VoIP phone system, you can put it on the Buckles network. We have a special VLAN for that, which is a virtual local area network, where it will sub the network from just for the phones. They'll get their own IP addresses, and it'll be completely separate from the other machines like staff and public and Wi-Fi and things like that. So, but the short and sweet answer is most of the time it's through email. The other times it's through phone, and sometimes we even go on site and I deal with them that way too. So I talk to everybody. They usually reach out to me mostly.
Um, I know you mentioned the benefits of buying computers through Buckles, but I've been asked if you could you do a quick recap of why Buckles is the place to go for computers without going into too much time?
Sure. Um, like I mentioned in the slide, I deal with one vendor, and this vendor goes out of their way to get me the best price possible for the highest quality product that I can get. Buckles has been going with HP before it was Compaq, then HP bought Compaq. That's how long we've been going with that computer. It's a trusted brand that we trust solely, and there's never been a thought to go to something else. Not that there isn't other good products, but we know we're getting a high quality product with HP, and the vendor goes out of their way to make sure that I get the best price. Um, as I mentioned earlier, there was, you know, a faux pas, and they ate the cost on the RAM for me. I don't know how many people are going to do that. Most of them are going to say, "I don't care about your budget. You owe me this many thousands of dollars to put it on this many machines." And this vendor doesn't do that. They are very, very dedicated to us to make sure that we get the best deal. I start the conversation in October, and I just finalized that conversation a few days ago. And you might say, why did it take so long? Well, because they also have to deal with HP just like I do. And HP sometimes doesn't have the best price at the right time. So what happens is there's a lot of negotiating that goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And a lot of vendors don't want to do that. They just want to say, you know what, I can get it for $1,200. That's what you can get it for. But my vendor doesn't do that. I tell them, this is my budget. This is what I need it for. And they go out of their way and they make sure they can do it. And that's the short answer.
Couple more that we
Sure.
have right now. There's no more in the chat, but we have a couple more previously
Okay.
asked previously. My community leaders, but before I ask the question, we do roundtables for our trustees at least 4 or 5 times a year. And even though those roundtables, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, but as to what we're doing, but we allow people to, they're interactive. They have each one has a subject matter But we do allow people to ask, because this is a networking situation as well. We allow them to ask questions that are not necessarily on the topic. And one of the questions that comes up all the time is how should I work with my municipality leaders regarding maybe having to go above the third of a mil, or or it's usually monetarily. And we constantly remind them that they need to make a great relationship with their municipality leaders, so that it can't be that the only time they ever see you is when you're coming in with your hand out looking for money, because that just doesn't usually work. But regardless, so we make that a very important point. But there is a question that does come up about, since the Buckles bill is typically one of the higher bills that I pay or they pay regarding your budget, outside of salaries. Is there a 90-second sales pitch that can be made to make them understand that it isn't the same thing as going to Amazon and buying a book? There's a lot more going on. And do you folks have any recommendation as to what can I tell, what can be told to a municipality leaders that gets them to understand? Maybe it takes more than 90 seconds.
Well, sure. I've never, there's an old joke about librarians, we're going to give you get all the time we could possibly take when we talk to you. It's just kind of the way it goes. The first thing I would say is, you get the Buckles Value Report 2024, right? If you really want a very short and sweet and graphic, why am I with Buckles? I would go there first and just say, here, take a look, because it graphically talks about the question that your borough is not answering, which is, okay, so let's say, because essentially, if you want to make the financial argument, you're going to say, okay, Buckles goes away, what do my costs look like, right? Because if Buckles went away and you didn't have your Buckles bill, number one thing is you don't have an ILS. You got to go buy an ILS. Okay, you got to go buy an ILS, and likely your cheapest. And I think we have this on the deal. I'll just pull it up. To get an ILS, a standalone cost, and this is not even this is not even something that you have now, would be 30 grand alone. Okay, 30 grand just to have the ILS. All right, so you take a look at your Buckles bill and you say, okay, I have to spend this on an ILS alone. But if you get an ILS, this integrated library system that allows you to check books in and out and keep track of this stuff, it's not just that. You're going to have to get somebody who can run it. Now you're going to say, well, maybe my director can run it. Your director will not be happy, right? ILSs are not so easy to run. They take a lot of time. There's a lot of effort in there. And if you're ever in, and I've been in consortium where the director was sort of the ILS administrator, a ton of time gets taken into that deal. You're also now going to have to catalog all your items, right? And if you're going to catalog your items now, maybe you don't care. Maybe you do care whether or not you have a high quality bib record. This is what allows people to find material. Like, it's pretty easy to put a title and an author in, but those subject headings that you get in there, right? I want to see YA dystopian fiction. Maybe some of you really like YA dystopian fiction. All that extra stuff in that catalog, that costs money too, right? So when we talk about what it costs to do what you have, now we're not even at the technology piece here. We're not out of the catalog at this point, right? We even got to the e-content piece. We haven't gone to the IT stuff. We haven't gone to any of those other pieces that you get out of Buckles. We're just at the ILS piece, right? And you can see it's very expensive to have that stuff on your own. And so if I was making just the concept of like, hey, look, this is the numbers, that consortium value report of 2024 is exactly where I'd go. If you have a municipality who say more vibey and not as much more numbers, the thing I would always tell people is it's better to be in a group. right? This works for everything. Like, if I'm going to face an uncertain future, would I rather face a future surrounded by people who are working with me, or do I want to be the lone wolf on the prairie, right? And I'm going to tell you right now, it's much better to be within a group than it is to sort of be standalone. And if you don't believe me, when we came out of COVID, the amount of libraries that were standalone that joined consortium, like, it was rapid, and there was a massive movement because of the cost savings, because of the things like the cyber insurance, because of all those other issues that are there, because of what it means for your staff development. So if you need a more vibey answer, that's a more vibey answer that the kids would say.
Dave, would you tell us what ILS is?
Sure, that's the integrated library system. You may know it as Polaris, right? It's the thing, it's the thing you all use to place holds on books, right? It's the thing you use to search for titles, right? It's the thing that forms the backbone of our relationship with each other, right? It allows books to move back and forth, right? And we have one, so there's two sort of what we would call premium ILSs out there, and that's what you get to use. And by the way, I guess there's a third argument if you really want to go there. The ILS that your library uses, the integrated library system, the thing that checks books in, has discovery, whatever, it's the same ILS that New York Public Library uses. Okay? It is the same thing. Now, I know that none of you have people who travel into the city, and I know none of you have residents who are working in New York and using that system and looking at that. What it essentially means is when you are looking at your resident who's trying to think of what the quality of life is in your town, and you can look at them and say, look, we have the same backbone for library service that New York Public has for a fraction of the cost of what it would cost for me to buy something that would not be as effective. Okay, so I give you three different pitches if you want. There's three, like there's the numbers. I always like the numbers. There's the vibes, and then there's the competition. You know, you can kind of pick which one you think your municipality might go toward.
Thank you. What process does Buckles use to determine which technology programs you choose or recommend to the member libraries for them to use?
So I'm going to jump in right before Joe.
Sure.
Because when we say technology, we can mean two different things. All right. So I'll let Joe talk in a minute, but in his presentation, you sort of got a sense of the kinds of recommendations we make. Those are typically hardware, software kinds of things that we make. There's another level of software or other technologies that come out of committee work. So for instance, the recommendations around your e-content, your digital books that you use, that comes out of committee for eBuckles. There is a technology committee, and one of their charges is they look at new technology for use in public libraries. Like right now, they're looking at a type of people counter that also provides data that sort of gives you a sense of when your rooms are busy, when they're not. It can sort of delineate between adults and kids, and they're testing it right now, right? There's two types of technology that I want you to be aware of. There's the technology that Joe, and I'll let him talk in a minute about how they come up with those kinds of things, but there's a second level of technology that is more what we might call library program specific. And we tend to take that through the committee process, and committees evaluate, and they come to us with recommendations on whether or not we should support it, adopt it, and make it available to folks. So I'll let Joe talk about the other stuff.
Dave. So as far as the IT portion of it, one of the things that we always think about is this something that libraries want? So when we make a decision on, say, something like Wi-Fi, we test it first. We ask libraries, who wants to be a test site? And when we were testing Wi-Fi, we had 3 libraries that said, me, please, please, please. So, we tell them, like, listen, we're going to do this. We're going to get all the bugs out. So when we present this as an optional service to our libraries, we want to be able to hit the ground running. And it's things like that how we decide. So another product that we have is something called Deep Freeze. It's within the Deep Freeze Cloud Suite. And this product is our lockdown for public machines. It's antivirus. It freezes the computer so that if a virus were to get on it, you simply reboot it and it's gone. It does that on its own every day. It does all the Windows updates. We program it to do that, and it does everything that we say. We can pull back KB files so that if, let's say, Microsoft says, "Oh, this file that we put through this update breaks something," we can stop it from going to the public and staff machines. But we test everything first before we even consider it. And that's everything from a Windows operating system. When a new Windows operating system comes out, we don't just jump on it and roll it out into the network. We get a machine, we put it on there, we test it, we try and break it on purpose. We want to do all of these things so that when it's ready to roll out, there is as little problems as possible. So that's how the IT side determines technology programs for the libraries. It's things like that. If libraries come to us and they say, "Hey, we're thinking about this. What should we do?" We allow libraries to install any software on their machines that they want. We don't hold them back like other systems do. The staff machines have administrative privileges. Public machines, there's a way to turn off the lockdown to get administrative privileges to install it, and then you can use it and you can do whatever you want. If said software does something to the machine, we come out, we back it up if we can, we wipe it, and we put it back into operation. So as far as the software or programs technology, that's how we usually do things like that for the IT side. Everything is tested first. We don't just throw it out there without that. I'm a very big supporter of testing and making sure, if I can break it, awesome, because then we can learn how to fix it and make sure it doesn't break again.
Yeah, we just got another one in the chat box about cybersecurity. What does Buckles do to protect its member libraries against cyber threats?
Well, as Dave mentioned earlier, we have cyber insurance, but aside from that, we have something called Cisco Umbrella. And in conjunction with that, we have something called a Cisco firewall. And the Cisco firewall is like the backbone of the Buckles network. It handles everything. If a new library comes onto the network, it has to be put there. It oversees literally everything. And with Deep Freeze on all of the computers in the network, every single machine comes with antivirus, and it is constantly monitoring, and it is constantly protecting computers. But along with that, in the background, is something called Cisco Umbrella. And that runs in the background, and it stops things like malware, and it stops things like antivirus, and bugs and things like that, stuff that you don't even see. Like when you're at home and you go to a website and you have antivirus, your machine usually pops up a box and it yells at you, bad, 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 don't go here. Cisco Umbrella, it kind of sweeps it away. It just doesn't even let it happen. It just stops the occurrence before it even gets to you because it is monitoring everything. So that is just a couple of things that we do: cyber insurance, Cisco firewall, and Cisco Umbrella. I would not do any of this unless I had any of those things. Those are the most important things if you're running a network as large as we are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And got another one in the chat box for you.
Sure.
Is there a catalog or recommendations for specialty devices like 3D printers or laser cutters, and/or a list of material suppliers to leverage group purchasing?
Joe, I'll work on that. Yeah.
Well,
Joe's
I didn't
thinking
know
about
if
it.
if that was a
So
part of, do we have somewhere on the website where libraries
no,
have those
no.
things for patrons?
So the short answer is no. And here's the deal. Your IT team is really busy doing a lot of things. Like Joe detailed all the things. Anybody can call when there's an issue. So we haven't done sort of a consumer reports. If I want to buy a 3D printer, where should I go? Right. So I'll just be honest. I don't know that we're going to get into that business. Right. So the short answer is no. The longer answer is, remember when I said it's better to be part of a group? So when we have questions like this, when we have questions about a piece of things, like if you want a laser cutter, what we have set up is an ability for our directors to communicate with each other. And this is where they ask each other questions, right? And they will go to all the directors and say, hey, is anybody using a 3D printer and what did you use? Please tell me about it. And the directors are all very nice and support. And whoever's bought a 3D printer will take them back. Or they may know somebody who has bought a 3D printer and done that, right? The reason that we kind of stay out of, if we're not supporting it, we're not making a whole bunch of recommendations. We're not Wirecutter. And like I said, you know, Joe's IT department's a very, very busy group. And I don't know that we'd want to set aside a lot of time to say, hey, can you evaluate all the 3D printers and sort of tell you where the best is, right? I think the informal way that we normally take, and by the way, we do this for everything else. Who do you recommend for being a good carpet cleaner? Same kind of thing happens. That's part of being in a group and kind of accessing the hive mind for figuring some of this stuff out. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully that's an okay answer. May not be satisfying, but that's kind of why we do it that way. Is we want to make sure that the stuff that we are going to be providing support to, that we know really, really well, we're going to support it really well. The rest of that stuff, we're probably not your go-to people. I'm not going to say that my IT people won't have opinions on it. Really not going to say that. But as a regimented kind of thing, we're not going to really go down that strategy.
Another one from the chat box is, other than training, how does Buckle support directors?
Okay. You know, when we talk about training, I guess you look at it a couple different ways here. You know, when we think of training, we're thinking of classes, right? That folks can go into. And we certainly have that leadership training, and we certainly have classes that directors can attend. One of the things we also do, just so we know about things that happen, is anybody who's a new director, we have a new directors training that happens so that all new directors can come together and we have this moment where we really talk about it. That's sort of a very formalized way of supporting your director. There are some other ways of doing it. When we talk about serving on committees, right, we talk about serving on the executive board, those are real great growth opportunities for your director, because there are going to be other leadership opportunities for them, right? You want to grow your people. So if I'm in a really small library, right, I've got a set of challenges ahead of me that I have to meet. If you want to make sure that your director is growing and thinking maybe in a more broad context, you might want to make sure they're on one of those committees. You might want to make sure that they have sort of those ties to folks, because that creates a lot of informal networking, right? And that informal networking becomes a lot of importance about what you get out of a consortium. If you ask the directors, and we certainly have some here tonight, I will tell you, one of the greatest tools that we provide folks, and you're going to laugh, you're going to think I'm silly, but I talked about it a little bit in technology. So we have these established lists, right? Where if a director has a question, and you know, we might think it's a little silly that, you know, I really need to know who's the best exterminator, right? So your director could take all of a day or 2 days researching all the exterminators around, or they could take 30 seconds, type an email to the rest of the directors in the board and say, hey, does anybody have an exterminator they really like? Right? It's sort of our own internal Angie's list, if you think about it. I guess it's just Angie right now. I think they dropped the list. But anyway, when we think about our supportive directors, and we may not think about that in the same way of this is a formal class, we're teaching you to be a leader and all those different things. But I guarantee you, the directors on this call will tell you, we've used it. We've used it. I got a question, I need this, and I'm going to ask the hive mind for help. And you'll be amazed at what people write back. You'll be amazed at how much, and this is the one great thing about being part of 78 people, is they're directors too. They know the pain and they know they're going to be asking. And so they're coming back to talk to you a little bit about that as well. One of the other ways we support directors that I want to make sure you all know about is, we fully tell every director, you want us to come to your board meeting and talk, particularly if it's about the Buckles bill, we're there for you, right? No directors on their own. If you want us to talk, we've talked to boards. We've actually talked to city councils. We've talked to different people on behalf of whatever library has asked us to do that, right? So we will support you at your own board meeting if you want us to come and talk a little bit about stuff. I have some boards that invite me every year because they just want to hear what's happening about Buckles. We can do that as well. So those are some of the ways that we support our directors beyond just, say, a class, right? So just keep in mind, you got those opportunities to serve on those committees and sort of build your leadership portfolio. You have the ability to sort of network with all the other directors that you have. You've got that ability to access that hive mind, which let me just tell you is a lot more important than maybe we sometimes think. And we'll also support you. If you want us to talk to a board or a mayor or whatever you have, we'll do that too.
Thank you.
Wow.
That's it for the questions. There's no more in the chat box, and we don't have any previously delivered ones. I want to thank Joe and Dave for their great participation and their wisdom and information. Before I do some final cleanup stuff, do either of you have any final words you'd like to say, or are you done?
I just want everybody to know what an amazing resource you have in Guida. I think you got a little sense of why we think he's so special and why he's such a big part of the Buckles family. Joe's been here with the organization longer than some of you have been alive, just so you know. He's been here a very long time. And he has a tremendous sense of what Buckles is, and I think it imbues the work that we do. His team is really crazy amazing. The whole team at Buckles, I just want you to really understand, these are groups of people who've come to work for a nonprofit and really believe in the mission of public libraries. And so when we talk about the value proposition and what we're doing, this is what we're all understanding. And we do this because we want to meet the standard that you all have set, right? You're not getting paid to be here. Well, I don't think you're getting paid to be here. I don't know. I've heard a lot of crazy things since I moved to New Jersey about politics, but I don't think you're getting paid to be here. And we really do. When I say thank you so much for giving up your time, we literally can't do what we do without you. The fact that you're willing to be on these boards and make sure these public libraries are independent organizations to serve your community, I can't tell you what bravery that is. I can't tell you what amazing things that is for your community. And we salute you and hope that our work is up to the standard of what you guys do. So thank you very much for taking a part of your evening, and let's hope that the snow comes before the ice.
Yeah, as Dave mentioned, thank you very much. Yeah, I've been with Buckles over 2 decades, and I've never had a thought of going anywhere else. I've had plenty of friends in the corporate IT world and have been unhappy and happy and let go and brought back and start a new job. And I just always find comfort in working for Buckles and never wanting to leave. In my first week after I was hired, Robert White, the then executive director asked me how I enjoyed my first week, and I told him flat out, I said I would love to retire here, and that is my intention. So.
Okay, Tom, are we still here? I think we might have lost Tom. But I just want to thank everyone else again for coming, and thank you, Dave and Joe, for taking so much time tonight to speak with us. If you guys have any follow-up questions, you could always email buckles@buckles.org. Darlene will be sending out a survey about the program to give out some feedback to us. And in a couple, you'll also get your education credit certificate when she sends out that email as well. And I think that's about it. Darlene, did I miss anything?
Caitlin, you covered everything very well.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and have a good night. And let's hope that the snow stays away.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.